I am so excited to show you today how I made this little mini pillow. We're gonna walk through all the little steps, and this is a great way to use up smaller scraps from bigger quilt projects. And it's also just a great quick project, little mini pillows. And mini pillows can be used on shelves. They can use on tier tray decoration or in baskets, like I'll show you how I've used this. And this was just such a fun little project. I did it with French seams here, and you'll see how I sewed it all together. Now, I live here in central North Carolina, and we don't get a lot of snow. So this is me being hopeful. It's the end of January, and I'm hoping maybe we'll get a dusting this year. Let's get started with this project. So I needed to get some round shapes from around the house for the body of the snowman. So I got biscuit cutters and spools. And then I need a small pair of scissors, a marker, and Steam-A-Seam, which is a product that adheres fabric to the background just by ironing it. So I drew my shapes onto the Steam-A-Seam, which was already adhered to the fabric, and then I placed them onto my background fabric. Now you're just going to use scraps of fabric that you have around the house. And I cut the shapes of the the hat, the snowman hat, and the scarf just by looking at shapes that I found online. So I didn't mark those out. I didn't have a pattern. I didn't have a template. I just grabbed a pair of scissors and eyeballed how to cut out a hat. So then I got some pearl cotton embroidery thread and an embroidery needle and started to bring this snowman to life. And I used straight stitches all the way around the snowman to give it a face and some character. And then the snowflakes I switched to white and did a straight stitch just closer together to mimic the snowflakes that are in the other fabric that you see on kind of on the borders. The arms I used a running stitch to make it look like branches with a brown thread. And I just love how the stitching brings it to life even more than the fabric choices. So these are examples of two kinds of needles that you can use. One of these are the Richard and Hemming and Son. Looks like it's size 4. You just want something to have a large eye, and I don't like a point to be too sharp. These are DMC ones. Looks like it's number 24 DMC. And I like these. They have a large eye, not too long. These are a little bit longer and not an extremely sharp point. So that's what I look for in embroidery needles. Okay, so I'm gonna take my thread. It's a size 8 pearl cotton. I'm gonna stick it through my fabric. This is the exact same fabric that I used on my pillow. I don't like to use a hoop because I just like to bunch it in my hand. It gives me more flexibility. So when you don't use a hoop, you just have to be very careful about how tight you pull the thread. I'm going to start with a running stitch. This is the stitch that I used for the arms of the snowman. And with a running stitch, you don't want to make your stitches too long, right? You come just beyond, maybe 1/8 of an inch beyond the previous stitch. Go back into the exact same hole and keep your thread next to this stitch. See, I'm pulling it taut, not tight. I'm making sure my fabric does not bunch up. Back into the same hole, pulling it taut, not tight. I usually take it and kind of do like this. Press it down, that helps me to see. And I like a running stitch. I liked it for the arms because it's a little bit of a denser look so that the arms didn't look too thin. You can use the straight stitch for the arms, would be okay. But see how it kind of has like a rope-like look? So that's why I chose that stitch for the arms. And then you can just kind of branch off like I did to make like, you know, it looks like a, I say branch off, pardon the pun, so that the arms can look like actual branches. So I could just stay to the same side always of your original stitch. I'm staying to this side, you see. Like, for example, I wouldn't want to start pulling this over to this side, is what I mean. So I want to keep my
stitch on this side of the needle. I don't know if that's a right or left, top or bottom, whatever, but okay. And so that's kind of how you give it that branchy look. Now I'm going to come over here and show you. Now I'm going to show you the basic straight stitch, and this is what I use to outline the body of the snowman. I just like it. It looks like a dotted line kind of outlining something. You want to make your stitch on top longer than the stitch on the bottom. See how that is? And I just do like a couple of stitches at a time. Pull it tight, not taut. You don't want to cinch up your fabric. So as I'm stitching, because I'm not using a hoop, I'm constantly making sure that I'm not pulling my fabric too tight. I was just doing that backwards, 1/4 of an inch. You want it less underneath the needle, or underneath the fabric, longer stitch above the fabric. Short stitch underneath the fabric, longer stitch above the fabric, okay? And that's how you do that. You just go around and around and around. So then how did I do the stitch for the snowflakes? So let me show you. I'm just going to go right above here. The way you do the snowflakes, and like I said, I just made those up. I didn't have any kind of pattern. I just kind of stitched along. You want to go back into the same hole. And you can kind of branch off like this to make it, you know, look like the different pieces that come off a snowflake, if you will. You go back into the same hole sometimes. You might go back into the same hole like a few times, like I'm doing this one. And then I'm going to come back out of this one and come back into that original hole, and I'll go the other way to make the other side of that snowflake. I'm going to pop out over here, go back in, and then pop back out over there. Come back into that center point. Right, so that's how I made the snowflakes with that. It's a straight stitch, but it just, let me just come back up here randomly to show you. It's a straight stitch, but it doesn't have the spaces in between. Okay, so there you have it. The running stitch for the branches or the arms, straight stitch to outline the snowman, and then the snowflake stitch, which is a straight stitch. So just keep making sure that you're not pulling your fabric too taut, and that's how I did it.
Now you're ready to layer your pillow and sew it together. So here you're going to put the backing fabric, the back of your pillow, and the front of your pillow facing each other with a layer of batting on top of the wrong side of the front of the pillow. Now, this is a pillow. Why am I using batting? I like to use batting because it makes it smooth so that when you put the stuffing in, it doesn't look lumpy from the front. So that's why the batting needs to be attached to the front side. So that's important as you're layering and getting ready to sew your pillow together. Here is what it looks like after I've sewn it together. And notice I've trimmed the corners so that when you turn it right side out, you don't have any bulk. So you flip it right side out through the turn hole and get the corners pushed out as much as you can and give it a good press. When you press it with the iron, that will help to keep the turn hole seams facing inward as you go to do the French seams here in the next step. And this was the fun part. I got to sew the beautiful decorative yarn that I just happen to have in my stash all the way around the pillow, about 1/4 of an inch in, using a narrow zigzag stitch. Now, I just used a regular open-toed foot, and went very slowly around the pillow to get that yarn tucked in nicely. And the French seam served to close up the raw edges, which doesn't really matter, but I like how the French seam gave a border look to this pillow. Without having to add a border. And here you can see on the back that I had to leave a turn hole because the next step is stuffing the pillow. Now I got to stuff this pillow with actual untreated cotton. I live in central North Carolina and my parents have a cotton field next to their house. And there I am basking in the glory of a cotton field in mid-October. And after cotton is harvested, there'll be a bunch left over in the field. It just kind of looks like a snowy dusting. And so I went in and got a few plants. This is what an actual cotton boll looks like. And then I just picked some of it out and took it and used it in my pillow. Now, when cotton is untreated, you'll feel these kind of like bean-like things in there. But I just thought it was a really neat way to use the leftover cotton from the field. So this was exciting for me. So once you've got your pillow stuffed, now it's time to close up the turn hole. And so now you can see, I'm going to show you in this step how to close up the turn hole and how I stitched over that decorative yarn all the way around the pillow. Now this video is going at 3 times the speed. So what I want you to take from that is just go very slowly, very steadily. You're going to start at the turn hole, backstitch a little bit, go very slowly over the stitching and the yarn, and take these wonder clips out as you go. The wonder clips are helping to hold that turn hole closed as you stitch. And then you can see that I'm using like a seam ripper. You could use a stiletto, a pencil, whatever, to help slowly maneuver that yarn through the sewing machine, the needle, all the things. And then you'll backstitch at the end. And that yarn is so fuzzy that you're not even going to see where it starts and stops. So I backstitch really well, and then I just snipped off the yarn. You can see on the back there is a small zigzag stitch. I'm going to trim my threads, and then it's the cutest pillow ever. Oh my God, I'm so excited. So here we go. Isn't that adorable? I just want to show you, this is one way that you can decorate with a mini pillow. This is a shelf in a little area where I store all of my sewing supplies, and it's mine, all mine. Nobody gets to see it. So I decorate it however I want in there.
Y'all, I could not be more excited about how this adorable little decorative pillow turned out. This is my winter snowman pillow. You can see how it all came together using this decorative yarn with a tiny zigzag stitch. Really helped to cover up the turn hole here, which it's taken up in finishing that, so I don't need to go back and whip stitch it closed. It will stay. But the decorative yarn allowed me to be able to do like a French seam. So the seams are taken up in there. It's so cute, and I love the little carrot nose button I just happened to have. So I hope you love the snowman that you made, and this is one way I can use. You can use mini pillows in decorative trays for your table. He goes along with my other little snowman that I got at a craft fair.